Is it there, is it? Can't see it behind me.
Thank goodness.
I can't see you, Matt. Okay, so I think this might be, oh, we've got an extra other person. I'm going to begin the webinar now because we do have quite a few people joining at the moment. So as they roll in, that will be fine, but I'm going to hand over to Kevin to do our acknowledgement, and he'll pop back over to me to give you guys a couple of little housekeeping tips. So thanks, Kevin.
Okay, we acknowledge that we're hosting and recording this meeting from the lands of the Wanneroo Nation. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. I pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the land and waters of New South Wales, other states and territories. Thanks, Bianca.
Thank you. Okay, so to ensure that we have a bit better recording next time, and this time for the webinar, we're going to attempt where we can to have all the participants that are not speaking on mute, and so far that's going to be controlled by Kevin and myself, and I don't know if Kelly's got those controls yet, but what we'll do, instead of speaking, we would like people to either raise their hand so that we can see you and we'll hopefully get to you, or there is a function, if you toggle the mouse at the bottom of your screen, you'll actually see a couple of different things. One of them will be a reactions with a little smiley, and that is a clap or put your thumbs up, so that will come up in your screen. We'll be able to see that as well if we're not seeing that we're getting this waving happening. The other option that we'd like people to try and use while other people are speaking is, if you have a question with that person speaking, if you could also go to the bottom of the screen with your mouse, there's a chat function. If you click on that, you can actually type to the group. You could select to type that message to individual people as well, which becomes a private message to them.
No jokes.
Funny jokes are welcome. We may or may not read them out to the group, but if you want to do that, I think that's a better way for us to all manage the recording a little bit better, because we have some cutting in out noises and we'd like to try and eliminate that where possible. So yeah, feel free to put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question immediately, or if the question is relatable, you can type it into the chat function, if that's okay. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Kevin and Kelly to get this happening.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Hello, Faye, Terry, Krista, everybody's here. Will, welcome. Thank you all. Still can't see Matthew, so there is a God. And we're moving right along. I just want to pick up on what Bianca said about using the chat function. Let's keep the chats relevant to what's going on here, if you know what I mean, guys. All right, so because we can tell from this end who's talking to who and get a drift of what they're saying. All right, so today was going to be a, hi Terry, didn't see it, sorry. Today's going to be, was supposed to be questions answers for people under 50 hives. And seeing as to how nobody sent any questions or that we can answer, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. No, not really. We do have a certain level of interest in regards to wanting to, what do you say, go commercial, get bigger, have more hives and the like. So we might, is that all right with you, Kelly? We might address that straight up, unless, this is to give you a chance to think, there's anything questions-wise that you want to review or revisit from any previous webinars. I'll hand over to you for your thoughts or questions. Please raise hands. Oh, okay.
No one's got any questions.
Have you got figured out? Hello, how are you, Rachel? Rachel and I are old mates on webinar now. Okay, so no questions from previous topics like preparing hives for winter. Is that going well for you? All's good? It's no fun with everybody muted because it's sort of like a whole delayed process. I'll mute myself, that'll fix you.
It's going fine up here.
Yep, so you said you were working stringy bark, Tim?
Yeah, but it's all finished, so we'll be on the move very shortly. We just got to wait for it to dry up down there. And once I get back in a week or so, we'll probably shift those 4 loads from down south back up to the north coast here onto a bit of red gum and a bit of tea tree, and then just wait for the macas to start. They should start early to mid-August or late August. The avocados will start and then the macadamias follow. So that's what we'll be chasing. We've got a bit of canola to go to in mid-August. So that's about the only prospects we've got. But once spring hits, yeah, it's going to blow lids off up here because everywhere's budded. So.
Okay, everybody. So if you're going to shift hives, take them up to where Tim is. All right. So we might address that issue of growing your business. So does somebody want to give a bit of input? Terry, I know that you want to increase your bee numbers, and many people do. Could you say what your plans and intentions are, and then we'll get some feedback maybe from Alan to help in that, and Corinne, who runs a fairly substantial apiary on her own, may be able to give you some tips and pitfalls there too. Thanks, Terry.
I think Terry's actually sent a message and he's got to go to an urgent job, so I'm not sure he's actually there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yep, he's gone.
Oh, he is gone. All right. So Terry has something like 24 hives. Okay. And he wants to, oh yes, there's the message. Terry wants to grow that. The sounds is he would like to at least double that in spring. What kind of advice might you give to, remembering that this is recorded, so Terry will get that help and advice?
Yeah. So Alan, could you address that question?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know. I'd start by working out where, like, I think you need to work out what you want, and what's the most financial and best option to get there. So, like in spring, in theory, he could split all his hives in half, and he'd get to his 50. He could do it himself and just either buy caged queens or queen cells. Whether that's practical or not for Terry is a decision that only he can make. You know, we build up ourselves. We just kept splitting our hives till we got to the number that we wanted to get to, and that was a financial decision. And we also grew with the business. So we learned as we went along. And then the other thing is that you've got to work out, do your research and work out how you're gonna, like when we went from 160 or 200 and now we're at, it was 500 sitting in the paddock there now. We had to make a decision as to how we were gonna move them and transport them and what we were, you know.
So Alan, did you have to buy extra infrastructure to do that?
Yeah, we upgraded to a truck and a loader. We were on a trailer and a boom loader, but we went to a truck and a trailer, and a loader, like a van loader.
Yep.
We built all our own pallets. We built all our own boxes. Built all our own gear.
Do you know how to build a nuke?
Nuke box or the nuke itself?
The nuke box, mate. Come on.
We never use nuke boxes because they're too much work for us. We just went straight into what they were going to be in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you'd learned from the course that you'd taken. That's all.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Terry said was that he's planning on doing this. If I'm correct, he said he was thinking about doing it on canola. Anyone have any advice or tips from that respect?
Oh, we've been on canola since the start of June. We found a paddock. We do it all on canola. When we split off the canola, we keep them in doubles with no excluders. So they're solid double brood boxes. And then just as they're about to start looking like they're going to swarm, we just cut them straight in half. Because it's in the spring, they're going to be growing. The only problem with doing it early on canola is there's not many queens around. So they have to produce their own queen.
Do you see that as a viable intermediate step until you can get queens, or not enough drones?
You get a good enough queen if you're committed to requeen again in about either October or the autumn. If your bees are good enough, then there'll be enough drones there to make the few queens that you need. But you've got to be committed to requeen, in that autumn, so that then you know that you've got a good young queen for the following year.
Very helpful. Any other comments? How about anybody doing queens here that could give a tip as to when a good time to get queens might be with reference to the canola matter?
Canola is a good time to canola will give you bees an absolutely fantastic boost, but you've got to be there with brood combs and foundations, and you've got to work that bottom. But we run about probably 300 nukes, and they're absolutely detrimental to our business, because in the springtime when we get down the coast, if we get the odd dead out through the year, or you may get something wrong with a hive or something, anything that dies or anything, it goes straight to Stereotech, gets irradiated, and then in the springtime when we're down working avocados and macadamias or canola, our nukes down there, they all get transferred into 10 frame bottoms. We'll just take bottom boxes down with brood combs and foundations, just jam a nuke straight in them, and you've got an instant hive. By the time they come off canola or that, they're in doubles ready to produce honey. If that helps.
I don't know if you can hear, but I've got this fire alarm going off in the background. We're running hot here, folks. It's a very, very exciting webinar. Okay, well, with that, there is a question that's popped up, and I did see your hand, Faye. Can we come back to that? Okay, there's a question here wanting to know about opinions on vented bases. How many of us are there? 3, 6, 9, 14 people. So there's probably 14 points of view. So let's do a quick whip around. It's on what's your opinion on vented bases, and is there any view on their role in preventing small hive beetle or other issues? I'm going to throw to Corinne and Rachel, if I could, because you're in small hive beetle heaven there.
Kevin, sorry to interrupt, but we actually have to exit the building because of the fire alarm. I've just had someone barge into my office.
It's all right. We'll keep it going.
I'm just, well, you go. I didn't hear that. I'm going to lock the door. Go, Kelly. I'll follow.
How about, Kevin, I'll send you the text message with the phone number to call, and then you can still participate during that on the phone.
All right, okay. Well, yeah, nobody's chucked me out. Kelly will probably come down here and rip me out of the room.
Right, I'll get the number organised while we're
Kelly
doing
looks
that.
at my speed gauge when I'm driving. Oh, jeez. And anybody who's seen me drive.
Getting
Anyway.
very hazy in there. The smoke's coming through the door. I can see we've got a job to see on here.
Ah, it's me. Well, let's get on to the small hive beetle thing. Rachel, you want to say something about vented bases? Because do you sell many, and how do you think they are for a small hive beetle?
We do have a range of ventilated bee bases that we do sell. We personally, in any of our apiaries, we don't actually use them. We just have prevention in the hives. I guess, I don't know, we just make sure that the colony itself is really good for the hive beetle management, that we've never really had an issue with hive beetle to have to say to use a ventilated base. And I think it really just comes down to the colony and your beekeeping practices really at the end of the day. Though in saying that, I haven't had a sign out or anything, so maybe if that had happened, maybe my opinion would be different. But, you know, for people who use them, they like them. But, you know, there's all drawbacks with the fact that, you know...
Oh, where am I going? I have to go.
Okay.
Kelly's come to get me. I'll grab my phone. Please keep talking. Chat amongst yourselves.
I was just saying that there's always a drawback with them, that if you have a hive that's, you know, real keen on propolizing all the time, they fill them up, and without doing general maintenance, people don't realise, and then the bees are overheating. There's no hive beetle protection anyway, because they're just expecting them to work. So, I mean, we're not really dealing with a lot of commercial, we're dealing with amateurs, so it's a different area, and, you know, they have to keep on top of their maintenance, and that's when they don't work, because they're not looked after, the actual bases themselves. And that's my experience with them.
Yeah, so are the bases, you're not selling many of them at all to commercial beekeepers? They're happy with the processes that they use, clearly?
Well, the commercials go direct. I mean, they're wanting to buy vast quantities. You know, I'm an in-between. Unless you only have to buy from the distributor, then yeah, I do deal with some commercial operators. But, you know, if they can deal direct with the supplier of the products, of course they're going to go there, because, you know, you've got to get best price when you're buying quantity, and I can't always provide that. So I sell tons of the ventilated bases, because that's what the amateurs are really looking for, because, you know, they're on this whole, you know, got to have perfect hive and this and that. And it's all perfect when they set it up. Doesn't mean that they continue the journey of providing this to the bees. And that's when things start to fall apart, because they're not watching and understanding what's going on. But, you know, we try and assist them, talk to them about it. And a lot of them, I know, they won't even clean them. They just chuck it out and buy another one. I mean, I couldn't afford to keep on just throwing out components. Like, it's a bit crazy, but that's what they do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think potentially, I think this may happen with a lot of beekeepers, is they might have a theory about a particular location, or they might have a theory about a product like a ventilated base, and they don't necessarily carry out any real scientific methods in checking that there's a control. They might just turn all of their bee hives to ventilated bases and not have an option to check whether it was actually successful because of that base, or there's no real checking back on whether that's an effective way of controlling small hive beetle.
Well, it's definitely true. I mean, everything we have here, we basically trial on our hives too, to see how it works, and, you know, the pitfalls and this and that, so we can let people know when they purchase and what to do. But then generally we just go back to a standard base again. That's what we use. We can maintain it, repaint it. If not, it's not expensive to replace. You can make it yourself or make alterations yourself. But a lot of it in the smaller types of beekeeping, those skills have really been lost, and they just want to buy stuff that's already assembled. So I guess their options are also limited to what they purchase, because if they can't assemble stuff, then it is what it is, basically.
Yeah. So Krista, that was your question. Do you feel like you have anything further for that particular topic? Does anyone else have anything to add as well to that small hive beetle versus ventilated base?
What do you do, Tim, up in your commercial enterprise? What do you ever use vented bases, or you don't need to?
No, we don't. Oh, we've got some in our old bottoms are ventilated, but we sort of, when we're making bottoms, we don't make ventilated bottoms. We haven't had any real need for them. Our bees do well. Like, and a big thing up in this country is you want the hives to have maximum warmth during the day, and it's just another, like having a vented bottom's just another way of letting a bit of cold air in, and plus moisture too. They get moisture gets in. So I'm not against vented bases, don't get me wrong, but we just don't use them in our operation.
Yeah, good to hear. Thanks.
I like them. I use vented bases in my operation, and I find that they're very useful in a tropical climate because we often get inundated with water, especially if the hives, having everything on hive stands for cane toads. And if they're sinking in the ground and happen to sink backwards, then you end up with non-vented bases inundated with water. So good bottom ventilation seems to work really well in tropical climates. And I keep them more for that than for hive beetle. Hive beetle maintenance is just about keeping a strong hive and well maintained, one that doesn't have strange hiding places for hive beetle to get into that bees can't guard.
I think having your hives up on stands too helps prevent hive beetle as well. I've noticed a few blokes with pallets, they don't have hive beetle problems that like we do sometimes when our bees are sitting directly on the ground like they do. But it's just, you've just got to control it, just got to address weaker hives. If they get weak, that's when we tend to find that the hive beetle attacks. If they're a nice strong hive, they're pretty resilient.
Yes, I agree. Now, we did have another question. I'm just trying to find where it was. Oh, it was from getting started on offering hosting services. I was going to direct that question to Kelly, and I sent her a chat to address that, and then the fire alarm came in. So I think they're returning. I have received a message from Kevin to say that they're coming back to their office in a little while. I guess does anyone have any other questions that we can all discuss until they come back, apart from that hive hosting option? Does anyone actually host hives for other people? Yeah, if
we host hives, but not in a commercial sense. We host per suburb for, I guess, pollination or people who want bees, but they don't want to look after them. So we break the cycle of people having them just for the fact of having bees, and we maintain them. It depends on how you're looking at it from a point of as a business that you're hosting to receive an income from it or not. We don't do it from that aspect. We do it that it provides us with extra locations, because we're all suburbia. We can't have a glut of hives in one location. So for us, it allows us to expand all our apiaries, but in different locations. And we have sort of a maximum amount per place that we would put depending on the conversation with the hoster. We basically just give honey in return. We don't do any contract of, you know, them paying us to have them there and this. So I know there is some businesses that do that, the hosting, you pay and all these sorts of things, but we're not doing it from that point of view. We're just doing it as a personal expansion, and we only keep a small number because we have so many other things that we do, such as running a business. We can't have all the bees, so we just have a small amount that helps us to have enough honey for what we need to do.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And Faye, was yours a question or an additional comment on hosting?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Look, the question relates to what the strength of the hive after a really, really bad season. So I started off last season with 15, no, less than that. I think I had about 10 during the swarming season, split some, created some nukes, got up to 15, requeened half of them. Now, then we were hit with the bushfires. So they went through a horrendous season, extreme ash, smoke, a lot of darkness during the day, poor sunlight, and that went on for weeks. And they really suffered. So, of course, I've been feeding them. So my question is really, they're kind of okay, but they're not as strong as I would have liked them going into winter. Obviously, when I get into spring, I'll manage them for swarms. But I was wondering if the queens that I put in last December,
would there be some kind of adverse longer term impact in terms of their reproductive capacity, I suppose, after having just about choked and died, you know, for many, many weeks on end during that period, and whether or not I really need to requeen them all over again?
Kevin's on mute, but I think Corinne, he's asking if you would address this question, please.
Okay, it was a long
Thanks,
question.
Yeah, sorry.
I think it would depend on a lot of different things, like how many stores they had in the hive in the first place, and what the colony was, what condition the colony was like at the start. I ended up in a similar situation. I do have 2 hives that were in northern New South Wales that went through fires for 30 something odd days. The fire was burning on that property all the way around them, and I thought they'll be in a shocking state. I went right through them after about a month after the fires, expecting to bring them back to Queensland and do some rectification work, and they were healthier than my hives in Queensland. The drought in Queensland had severely knocked around things here, even more so than hives that were sitting in a bushfire for 30 days in New South Wales. But part of the reason for that was because they were big, strong hives, and they had good stores of everything, pollen, nectar. So they were able to continue to thermoregulate because they had the bee numbers. They were continuing to keep the nutrition up to the brood because they had the stores. So you'd have to...
Yeah, I guess my question is more about the impact on the queen. Because all my hives were strong going into last summer. They were all strong. Surprisingly, the strongest now are the ones that I didn't requeen. They were the ones that I'd put on the list to do in September of this year. And they've done very, very well. Some of the new queens I put in failed, but it's really a case of, it really gets back to the bee biology, or it's the impact of smoke and ash and sustained periods like that on the queen themselves, irrespective of whether or not it's a strong hive going into spring.
I don't think we know for sure.
Oh, well,
I certainly haven't looked. I'll have a look, see if there's any research papers on it.
Thank you.
But don't know if there's any impact from the smoke.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have anything to add that through their experience with fires in Queens? Troy? Yep.
Just with the bushfire smoke, I noticed my hives, there was a situation where a guy actually bought 150 hives down the road, and at that period when the smoke was around. Now, I don't know whether it was his hives that ate mine out or my bees actually ate the honey out due to the constant smoke. Any thoughts on that one? There was robbing going on as well.
From what I could see down the coast there with all that smoke, the bees just closed up shop. Like we go there when there was a heavy smoke haze, and that there wouldn't be a bee flying, but as soon as that smoke haze cleared a bit, they were out and about. So the only thing that probably affected in there for us is a bit of production. Like apart from the bees, it didn't seem to affect them at all.
I had quite a lot up here too, and a lot of mating nukes, and we had a lot of smoke coverage around November, December time, and I couldn't see any effect from the smoke on the queens. If anything, it was more to do with the nutrition because they weren't foraging, so they all needed supplementary feeding, but the queens were in good shape.
So there's the comment sounds to me like, just keep an eye on them, Faye, and it's the same old, replace queens as necessary. That's it. If she's doing her job, just go with it until you're not happy with the job she's doing. How simple was that answer? Sorry. I look forward to Corinne's further research on that, and I'm actually having a little look at some stuff myself, which is fun and exciting, but not for right now.
And it's probably not entirely relevant, but
oh, well, can you mute? Can I mute Corinne then? If it's not relevant, I'm just...
I have seen the effects that CO2 has on bees. When you gas them with CO2, you're starving them of oxygen, they become aggressive. So, but I don't know if there's any research on that. So it's a possibility that it changes their behaviour, the smoke. But can anyone comment on that who's had bees in a bushfire?
Well, I've been doing a lot of CO2 myself, and I'm as calm as anything. No other comments. Go away.
Really? Is that the best you can do?
That's all I have.
I can't comment on it through experience, but I'd be interested to find out, if anyone's analysed the effects of the smoke in terms of the CO2, Corinne, because obviously you're looking at the fire burning up a lot of the oxygen, so it would be interesting.
And the other comment that's come up again and again is the whole the reality of nutrition. That's I don't know that I dare say with the folk we're dealing with here, yes, but we have to spread that message because people haven't considered it enough. And we're in influential positions, each and every one of us, somewhere or other, to encourage people to always be considering what the nutritional value is around them. How are the bees reacting to that? Do they have sufficient stores in their hive? Oh, yawn break. Sorry.
And Kelly, would you like to? We did touch on it while you guys were attending to the fire drill. Don't know if it was a real fire, but let's hope it wasn't.
It singed my hair.
About hive hosting. Rachel made some important conversation about hive hosting in that they do that because it alleviates them having to have bees all in one area, and it gives them a business with a spread of bees around. So the question that Krista had regarding hive hosting.
Yep. Yeah, I can address that. I didn't know specifically what you were interested in, Krista, but yeah, I would agree with Rachel.
It's just a little bit hard to hear you. It's breaking up a tiny bit.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that
That's
better?
a bit better, yeah.
Okay. I'd agree with Rachel in that it definitely gives you a spread of area to put your hives in. That comes with both benefits and some pain as well, depending on how many you have in those different locations. Certainly you can get different honeys from the different places, and if you're looking at sort of marketing your product in that way, then that is a good option. But if you're looking at single hive locations, it does come with a significant amount of work. So think about that. But in terms of finding people that you want to host, I'd just be mindful of selecting sites with really easy access. So you don't want to select a site where you've got the host has to be home, or you've got to have keys or other things like that. It's much easier if you can negotiate with that person to access the hive when you need to, whether or not they're home. Certainly pick locations on the ground. I mean, when I first started out doing it, I really wanted hosts, so I pretty much took anyone that said they wanted a hive, which meant I ended up with hives in some pretty awkward positions, which I didn't like too much. I also ended up with a few crazies, so try and sort of vet them beforehand. And look, have a really clear agreement with them. Come up with a contract and define the terms of the agreement, what you will do, what you agree to, how much honey they will get, how many times you'll visit the hive, and then what their obligations are. So, you don't want them opening the hive, those sorts of things. For me, one of my things was no spraying, so they weren't allowed to use chemicals in their backyard. And they didn't always adhere to that. I did rock up to one day to find the host willy-nilly with the Roundup very close to the hive. So I very quickly, on the spot, dismantled that hive, leaving behind a small nuke. and I took the bulk of the hive away right then, and then I came back for the rest of it because I just didn't want any chemicals, regardless of their impact on the hive around that. So yeah, I'd say to you, form some kind of contract. Definitely have public liability insurance because you're on other people's property. Check that they're not allergic to these things or anaphylactic, or that their neighbours are not. Those sorts of things. So did you have anything else specific, Krista, or did that sort of cover it for you?
Yeah, they're really great practical points, Kelly. I suppose for urban beekeepers, if we want to increase our numbers of hives, what are our opportunities? And back down here, I'm in Melbourne at the moment, and some people have a business, a small business model going forward where they charge hosts $250, $350 a year, and then in exchange they might get 8 kilos of honey. But I guess my question was really about what do we do in the urban setting if we want to have more beehives? How do we go forward? Because, you know, really the hosting model, what I'm hearing is it's not really a business. It's hard to make it a business. It's very hard to make it something that you can actually, well, a business means drawing profit, doesn't it? So that's hard to do. So I guess it's really just that your practical points are absolutely fantastic. And it's that overarching question of what are we urban beekeepers going to do? How do we increase our numbers, you know? So yeah. I think that's a ponderable into the future, because down here in Melbourne, yeah, there's a few different ways of doing it, and I'm not sure if that's great success. I wish we could all go and migrate them around the lovely countryside, but
it depends on what you want. For me, I started off with single hives in single locations. Painful. Yeah. What I do now is I seek sites where I can put 6+ hives. So I have a couple of locations where people have got several acres, even though it's an urban environment. So I put 10 there. So I think you just have to make it viable, make it less work for yourself. You're not packing up every time for just one hive. You're going there and you're working 10 and you can knock over more in a day. So I think I would seek places like that where you can put more. I mean, it is, in terms of making it profitable, you can. That comes down to how you market your honey. So how, you know, I get a top price for my honey because of the way I market it. So it comes down to how you choose to sell it. People buy a story, and that's what you've got to sell.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
I was going to say there's a couple of things, in fact. One is you have to be prepared to do a lot of hard work to build your business in that regard. It may be helpful to find people around. I mean, this can be done through clubs or just letterbox dropping. Would you like to have a hive on your property or in your yard? Those sorts of things for gaining places. At one time I had hives in that many yards. I think I started to lose track and went, this is ridiculous, because every time you do something, it's singular. You're getting all your gear, and if you forget something, you're done. Like, you know, it's just too, for me, it didn't make sense because of where I was going and what I was doing. But that would be some of my suggestions. When I was in England, they actually used cemeteries. No problems with people getting stung. Oh man, you're a hard crowd today. So the thing is, they would have them well out of the way. I've seen hives on golf courses. All right, don't put them near bunkers. You just want, because I had calls from golf courses saying, oh, there's bees swarming and people are freaking out, you know. So anyway, there's options like that. Check with public lands. Those are the kinds of options I would suggest. One that I myself personally, and I'm saying this to be loud and clear, I would never have a hive on a rooftop myself. I wouldn't. You're talking lots of workplace health and safety issues. You're talking lots of access issues. You're talking lots of heavy carting, singular actions, lifts, and blah, 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 issues. So that's my preference, is keep off of a roof, for me.
It comes with trial and error, I guess. And when you do host, I guess you want to choose your area that it makes it viable, that you only travel so far, which is what we do. We have a radius, so we don't go outside of that. And obviously, the same as Kelly said, we have a minimum amount of hives to make it viable to go there. With regards to the comment, you know, I am part of a club. We have people contact us all the time with regards to hosting. And even then where our honey is, we have inquiries all the time too. So if I don't want them, I always just filter them out, you know, on Facebook. I'm on the Gold Coast. It's not going to help you in Melbourne, but we definitely, with our club, we filter them out, you know, putting out, does anyone want to gist? It's up to that person to go and view the site. I don't put any information towards what it is. They make their own agreements with them, but we definitely pass them on and arrangements are made. So it is viable. You just have to make it viable for yourself and work. And, you know, we have a strict rotation of what we do. And we also have kit boxes that are checked all the time to make sure we have everything. So, but they're things that we've learnt along the way. And if you don't, it can become very time consuming and it is a negative loss, you know, if you don't follow these things.
Yep, I would agree. You've got to have systems in place.
I'll see you later. I've got to go.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Cheers.
Catch up with you. Keep on canvas, mate. Haven't seen you for a bit.
I'm going on holiday tomorrow, so you won't see me for a bit either.
Well, I'm going on holiday in a couple of weeks. You better bring some fish back. I'll pick them up.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I'll try my best. See ya.
Good on you. Thank you.
So, Chris, just to echo Rachel, just quickly, you won't struggle to find hosts. You will be filtering them out. People really want beehives, but they don't want to do the work. So you won't have trouble finding people.
Okay, thanks for everyone's input. Really helpful. Thanks, guys.
Now, there is another question. Can you see that, Bianca? Do you want to? There's one about colors of pollen and being able to identify the plants. What kind of things do people have to say here? Thank you. Because is there a chart somewhere that does that? Or I would just encourage everyone to buy Doug's book. Oh.
I don't know if there's a chart for that at all. I haven't come across one. That doesn't mean there isn't one, but I haven't seen one. I think observing the bees on the plants is your best way of identifying where it's come from.
I think there's some either English, one of the big beekeeping associations in England has one, but it's not Australian. Just shows you some of the different colours. There's like a, what is it? One of those wheels.
Like a colour wheel.
Yeah, seen that around. I think there's maybe one floating around the internet somewhere if you have a look, but it won't have species in Australia particularly, just maybe clover and a few others like that.
Well, there's a project for someone.
It's pretty hard to do. Yeah, that's a Doug Somerville thing though.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, maybe Madeline.
Okay, so be doing that ID. Did we say anything about, public lands? I mean, you can always try doing that. As I said, I know that golf clubs and things, etc., but I don't know. It depends on how many hives you have in one place.
I would be wary of golf courses only because they do use a large amount of chemicals.
Yes. Okay, anything else? Any other comments, questions?
No. Yes, Troy?
Yes, thanks, Troy.
What about national parks and state forests?
That's what we're saying, public lands, yes.
Yeah, so what's the legalities of getting into these places and securing sites? Isn't that starting, you know, you actually have to go in and pay some sort of a fee to...
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah.
Give us a rundown, Alan.
Well, we've got national park sites and state forest sites that we've just picked up.
Sorry, Alan, can you just say there's New South Wales, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, because there are different beekeepers in different regions. So if we're talking specifically about New South Wales,
New South Wales, we've got state park sites or state forest sites in New South Wales. The DPI had released a pilot program to go. You put in for them, then you had to go check them out. Then you had to say whether they were any good or not, whether you wanted them. then you paid the fee. But they gave you a spot on the map and you had to find it yourself.
It was a little complicated.
Were you expecting a tour guide?
No, the only other problem with state forests in New South Wales and the national parks is that they now don't maintain their fire trails, and all the apiary sites are on the fire trails. So they're saying, yeah, they're there and you can have them if you want them, but they don't maintain the way to get into them. Like they don't maintain their fire tracks to the side.
More importantly, they don't repair them so you can get out.
Well,
I'm having some memories.
And there was, in New South Wales, there was a lot of people got caught with their bees in state forests when the fire started, because they just shut the forest and went, nah, no one's going in, no one's coming. So there was a lot of bees trapped in the state forests. Yeah, which was unfortunate, but
yeah.
If I could add a little bit of information about the national parks and the state forests, and any of the other bee sites that have been made available to beekeepers. There is currently a process happening where the sites are all, even the Forestry Corporation, they're all being amalgamated into one particular site. Nick Gagan is part of DPI, who's organising to have that as a one localised site that people can access.
Thanks for that, Bianca.
And those sites are also, it's been made very aware to DPI in that process that those sites are sometimes often inaccessible or they're forests of areas that are not particularly useful to beekeepers. And as a result, there is actually going to be an audit performed on all of the sites that are offered. And I think part of that has also come about because I think 24% of the sites that beekeepers are able to use as part of state forest and forestry corporation areas, they're actually 24% of them are damaged by fires. So that's another consideration. And I can see your point. We visited sites ourselves that were almost inaccessible, that were trees that were quite young, that were not flowering efficiently for beekeeping sites. There was potential issues with vandalism. Some of the sites were close to, suburban areas where you'd think that they would be damaged. So there's an audit happening to be able to give people better access to those sites.
Thanks, Bianca. Can we have some Queensland input about that?
Because question too.
Okay. Yeah. Go for it, Will. I don't see Will's question.
Will, we can't hear you. And he waved.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Sorry.
That's all right. We were all ready for the sign language.
I was just going to give you some input from Queensland because we actually leased some sites from the national parks here in a spot in Mapleton National Park. So what that involved for us was applying for the permit, paying the fee, which I think was done online through a form. We went and picked up the key from their ranger's office there. But what we found once we went for a drive through the area was basically echoing exactly what everyone said already, which is that it was really poorly maintained. Security would have been a massive issue for us because some of the sites had, like a low-lying sort of steel pole that could be locked with a padlock to stop people driving in. But then there was a map with a whole range of sort of small sites there, and then some of them had nothing at all, so anyone could have driven in and taken the hives. So we decided not to put them up there. And the other really, the other big factor for us was that accessibility was really poor. Even just trying to bring a trailer through the area, because we have a truck and trailer set up for our hives. and like a posse to move hives, and there's no possible way we would have been able to get any of that equipment into that area. It would have been an incredibly slow process. So as it is, we haven't used those at all. And I don't know why I thought this, but I kind of also heard a rumour through Queensland National Parks that they were trying to sort of phase out apiary sites in national parks and weren't really keen on sort of that ongoing due to the maintenance it required and things like that. So look, it wasn't a success for us. That's not to say that it wouldn't be awesome for a smaller operation, but certainly equipment wise and theft wise, it just wasn't a good move for us at this time.
Thanks for that, Will. And there is a bit of argy-bargy in Queensland. It's been going on for a while now. And one of the other reasons, as I understand, that they want to shut it out to apiarists is because honeybees are not native animals. And so they just want strictly native animals in them. So I'm not going to go anywhere with that. I'm just saying that that's another, it's just another one of the rationales.
Yeah, thanks.
There is one good thing at the moment, though. If you want to investigate some of these sites, which will probably be everything that everyone has just said, with big, huge, inaccessible potholes and mountain bikers going past the front of your hives,
I'm
and
still
roads that
looking
you
for a car.
can't back out of. As part of the funding arrangements, they've waived the fees for this year. That was to help us out with the drought. So at least this year you could go in and trial a site and you would end up not having to pay the permits and fees for it.
Well, that's helpful.
And a lot of the bigger beekeepers, they actually maintain their own tracks in and out. So they've all got, I don't know, backhoes or something that they can doze a track and clear.
You can put a blade on, you can put a blade on an event. So that's
yeah. So that's how they're getting around all these issues with maintenance.
New South Wales have only waived the fees for national park sites and state forest sites that were previously taken up. If you take a new one up, you still got to pay, I think it's about $200 a site for a new one for this year. It's only previously held ones.
I knew a fellow as well who had bees in a state forest. First time around, he had some hives stolen. And the next time he went to have a look, they'd only taken his queens. So, yeah, he was not a happy camper.
Yeah, so
these are issues.
Posted a question, Kevin, about security, and anyone's got any thoughts about electronic tracking of hives, and anyone had any hives stolen?
Thanks. Will's got his hand up.
Yeah, we'll speak to that and probably provide updates as webinars go on, because we're actually engaged with a bit of a software at the moment that's in development called IAPIS. I think it's in partnership with Ecritech out of New Zealand. And we actually just received our tags just last week, and also the scanning devices, which is like an Android, looks like a small mobile phone attached to like a scanning sort of device that you'd normally see at a supermarket. We actually spent all of this week putting all the tags on. So they've arrived with our business's HIN number on them. And there's a number of features kind of being rolled out. It's used by an app, an IAPIS app, and there's some ability there to track hives with tags that can be hidden inside the hives. We haven't done that yet. We've just started with putting the tags on the front, and we're going to trial using that software to see how easy it is to sort of walk into the bee yard, use your advanced little scanning device and see how quickly or time efficient it is. So I'll be able to provide more updates on that. But yeah, theft has actually been a really big factor. We've got a farm site up around sort of the Fraser Coast area. And I reckon in the last few weeks, Barry's forwarded me emails of 3 separate beehive theft incidents. So it's absolutely rife. So, you know, I think we would be really keen to try and roll out this tracking software to see if it actually assists, because yeah, it's pretty disgraceful. So yeah, I'll provide updates.
With the tracking software, does that mean that you're using the Ecritech bases, which has the application for the labs to go into?
Yeah, we've got Ecritech bases. Yeah.
So you've got the New Zealand hive doctors with the trays underneath. Is that what you're using?
That's what we've got. Yeah, we've got the hive doctor. We haven't put any tracking tags in yet though. So we literally just got this stuff in the last week. So
yeah, it's meant to have a whole array to go with it, even the traceability of the honey and everything with the whole system when it's fully up and running.
That's right. Yeah, you should be able to. It's got all sorts of. I mean, you know, the caveat to all of this is that the app is still under development. So we've had a couple of video conferencing calls with Nicole from IAPIS, who is sort of rolling it all out with the developer. So yeah, I think it's just something interesting, and we can kind of see how it works for us and maybe provide feedback and see if it's useful for other people down the track.
Yeah, so Will, I had a question. You were saying that you're just doing the tags on the outside of the hives at the moment.
Yep.
So if someone comes along, for instance, and decides just to take the lid off and strip it out for a nuke, is it still detecting that the hive's been opened, or is it just if they pick the whole hive up and take it away?
It's actually, yeah, in answer to your question, there's one tag that actually monitors movement. So right. you can tell if someone's lifting a box off. Yep. It'll give you an alert. It should send an alert to the device.
Great.
So,
weight sensitive too, to allow you to know if you should be visiting these sites for robbing or anything, you know, to harvest honey. So they're weight sensitive as far as I'm aware too. So it would alert
That's
you.
That's right. Yeah. Where like, I mean, this is all, again, in development. We are literally rolling out the first part, which is IAPIS asset, which is purely about tagging brood boxes, tagging super boxes, and keeping track of stock and what, you know, how many, like what equipment have we got, what's actually in the field in use, and then what's in storage, because it has that functionality as well. The second part of the rollout is going to be obviously tracking hive activity, movement sensors, you know, the ability to, you know, track if there's, if it's been moved, etc. So yeah, we'll be able to provide plenty of updates, but yeah, it's interesting to try out anyway.
Great, thanks for that, Will. That's a heap of information, and that's, you know, as Will says, in development. So watch this space. There are other methodologies. I'm even thinking. Oh, sorry, Corinne, can I throw back to you? I can't remember the lady's name who hassled the police when she had her hives stolen. It's a few years ago, and she found them and did a deal with the thieves. She's the science lady.
Serena.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. That was interesting. No, you sound like you remember the whole story better than I do.
Well, that's the story.
Well, instead of getting them booked, she cut a deal with them that they paid for the hives, so they didn't go to jail. And I think she ended up selling the hives for, it was a ridiculous amount of money, something like $1,200 each or something like that. Which is...
Yeah. So there you go. Crime does pay.
I don't know how she tracked them down.
I can't remember.
She did a lot of door knocking.
Yeah.
And she found someone who'd seen them, and she eventually tracked them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. Does that deal all right for people with having them stolen and that? That's why access and security are so important, and the number of people that have access, even when it's secure access, if that makes sense. And it may not, but it's just, you just don't know who's there.
We've only experienced like vandalism on some of ours, and we did have to deal with the police, all sorts of different associations or corporate bodies, whatever, and we didn't really get anywhere with any of it. We just have to absorb it and let it go. We do now have security cameras now on everything. We already had insurance and stuff, but, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes to take out a claim isn't worth it. But, you know, we don't have stock police here, so it makes it quite difficult. There's no one who's interested to go forward with those sorts of things because they don't really deem bees of livestock down here. So you have to roll with the punches and just let it be, unfortunately.
Yeah, vandalism is the only issue that I've come across in an urban setting, but I do know that a lot of people who've had native beehives stolen in urban areas quite commonly and frequently. They're small and, you know, easy to run off with. But yeah, vandalism, definitely. I had some kids throw Besser blocks through a polystyrene hive. And they didn't get caught, but they got stung a lot. So I felt that that was kind of justice.
Okay, how are we going? Any comments, questions? Please, I would really ask that you get involved in your Canvas work online. We're sitting here twiddling thumbs, as you can imagine, being public servants, not. But we do look at Kelly. We would appreciate you getting through that, because once, and we're talking about this now, once the face-to-face starts happening, it's going to be really hectic for us, because Bianca's worked really hard to get a lot of people involved in the face-to-face and online. I see that Cody has said if I'm going away on holidays, which I am in a couple of weeks, is it that long away? That can we just give lots of invites to Canvas material? And I'll say, for those of you who are getting through it, that's great to see. Also, discussions, any comments or questions you have that arise from here, we can keep this conversation going. You can keep sending in questions and people are there to answer. We will claim some rights for veto, being DPI employees and running this site, so you'll understand that. We will be all with due respect. What else? There was something else I was going to say. You'll wait, won't you, while I remember? It's good having this participation. I know what else it was. If you have a topic, something that you are interested in, would like to have brought up in one of these webinars, you got to let us know. All right? Our imaginations run wild. So there's just so much we'd like to keep it specific. And one day we're even hoping to do some of our course content as presentations on webinars. So we can go into little rooms and have individual discussions. We can teach from the training room. So these are things we're looking at. Give us your input, ideas, and the like. Yeah?
Yep. All constructive feedback is welcome.
Yes.
So we want to tailor this arena to your guys' needs.
Can I just ask a question? Obviously, at the moment, we're doing everything online. Just a minute. We're getting through it, but a lot of it's sensitive to the fact that it's not the season for it. So there's no due dates, and I understand that. So obviously completing parts of the modules that can be done without the seasonal parts of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not sure how many modules everyone is working on, but, you know, obviously as you do all the bits that you can do, will more be added so that you can keep on going until you have seasonal access to do some of the activities?
Yeah, I think Bianca's inviting you to all of the subjects that you can complete online, and obviously some of them will have seasonal components that you won't be able to do. I'm not sure if you've been invited to all subjects, but probably a lot of them. There's a couple still coming. Transport hives is still in development, so that'll happen at some stage in the next 6 weeks or so.
And is there any sort of date as yet to what time we might be coming onto campus? Because obviously,
yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay, I'll have to get a babysitter.
Yeah,
it's only 8 hours from the Gold Coast, Rachel.
Tentatively, we're going to resume hopefully face-to-face training in September. So tentatively, we've set some dates, but they're not firmed up yet. Just
Bianca, do you want to say something to that?
Yeah, so we are in the process of, well, I'm in the process of making contact with everybody else around the college to ensure that the dates that fit with the B team actually fit with the rest of the college. And so we're looking at September, but that's not necessarily every person and every intake. And we're going to be as flexible as we can in that return to delivery of training face-to-face. So all students will be contacted with dates that affect them. And wherever possible, if there's dates are not sufficient for the students, we'll do whatever we can to try and have them join a different intake potentially, depending on class numbers, as we're sort of restricted with some still having COVID measures in place. So wherever we can, we will try and make sure that if students can't make it, or if it's something that timeframes don't allow, we'll do our best to arrange something else. And for Krista, the topics are still what they were previously. So the topics you won't receive online that you do come to the college to do face-to-face training are blocks 1 and blocks 2, which are usually for intake 4 and 5, which is coming up. They haven't been to block 1, so they've not done any beginning in bees. They've not done any face-to-face honeybee biosecurity. They haven't done the assemble and maintain beekeeping components units. So that would have been block 1. And block 2 for some students who are not using any credit transfers would be spring management. That's a 2-day course that covers manipulate honeybee brood and requeen a honeybee colony. Then the second 2 days of block 2 is usually requeen bees. So there will be those units in blocks 1 and 2 to be delivered to certain intakes. And then some people will still have to do either a makeup or a first attempt at the block 3 training, which is usually reserved for our elective units. So we've got a lot of students. We have a lot of class to get put into the calendar. So not everybody's going to be coming back in September, but that is roughly where we're beginning because of the climate here at Tocal College, so that we can get into the bees and do the jobs that we need to do.
Yeah, and because we're trying to accommodate everybody, you may find when you come to the college that if you've come already previously, you may be in a class with some people from different intakes.
I want to say, just for listening to Bianca chewing, that I do want to say kudos to Bianca, because you can just imagine the logistics she's trying to work with. Canceled courses, no face-to-face, dates, people coming and going. Well done, Bianca. As student support, you do a great job. Thank you so much.
She's got more right here. And
yeah, I just want to say that. And I want to say from my perspective that, folks, we've got a great team of people working here at Tocal, and we're here for you, all right? So that's why we say, let us know what you want and need. We just want these courses to be the best we can, and we work very closely together, not only physically. See, I can see you, and I can see you. I feel like play school.
We're socially distanced, don't forget.
yes.
That's right. Okay, so that's me. I think that's me for today. Anybody else? Last drink? Oh no, the bells are ringing. Last call for comments. Are we on time, Bianca?
Yes, but we probably need to let people get back to their other jobs and tasks for their days. If you do have more questions, feel free to email either of us here at Tocal, the 3 people in the B team. You can also make contact through Canvas, and when this recording is provided back into the Beehive, you can always post comments in there as well. And if you're watching this after the event and you still have a question, just put a comment down the bottom so that we can answer you.
Thanks heaps for that, Bianca. Thanks, Clancy. And I'm really glad, Bianca, that you finished the sentence when you said contact the 3. because I heard somebody say stooges, and that would not have been a correct thing. Okay.
Amigos, 3 amigos.
Amigos, sí. Hasta luego. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Oh dear.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.